Mental illness and transgenderism. Transgenderism and mental illness. Transgender is not a mental illness. Like and subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment in the comments section and I'll be sure to answer any comments and questions you have. I'll also answer in videos. If you have a good question, I'll make a video about it. Some of the questions I've had so far have been great. I've been taking some notes and doing some research into mental illness and transgenderism. Some of the information I've learned has been great. First of all, I want to talk about Jacques Lacan. He has Lacanian theory, which is talking about transgenderism. Lacanian theory talks about the phallus. The phallus talks about man as man is the phallus, whereas like man is the phallus, whereas women are being the phallus, whereas within the phallus. The phallus is, of course, the penis, or the penis is a phallus. We all know about phallic symbols in society. The anxiety that we face as a transgender person is a very common thing. Transgender people often suffer from depression, anxiety, and suicidality. Psychology today has an interesting quote. Distress and impairment consider essential characteristics of disorders among transgender individuals, primarily arise in response to discrimination, stigma, lack of acceptance, and abuse from, unfortunately, regarding abuse. Psychology today. Freud viewed transsexual as homosexual repressed. Now, I'll talk to you a little bit more about Lacanian theory. Lacanian theory talks about the phallic symbol, phallics. Now, since we have anxiety, the anxiety that we face as transsexuals, the anxiety is that we wish to be cut. The famous Lacanian theory defines an anxiety of lack, a demand for a cut in the real of the body that would subtract a privileged place of lack from the other. So we will have a cut in our body, obviously a new vagina that allows for the place where we can put the phallus. And in order for that to be put in us, then we can have it lacking, and it will decrease our anxiety and give us pleasure, and we can be seductive, and we can decrease our anxiety and depression, and reduce all of our depression through this. Transition is defined by I gotta find it here quickly. Sorry. Transition jouissance. Sexuality is not sexist or bigender because it's concerned with the object causes of desire, which are unisex. Desire is partial, not necessarily gendered, which suggests the potential to conceive of sexuality outside the confines of normal heterosexuality. More important, desire is independent of jouissance. And jouissance is essentially the phallus. As already stated, jouissance is linked to anxiety. In order to understand that to specifically transsexual suffering, this we examine character of jouissance. Transsexual woman that jouisses treated between 1952 and 1954. Many speculated there may be a demand for a cut in the real of the body which subtracted a privileged piece of flesh from the other's jouissance. Famously, anxiety as a lack of lack. It emerges for when the object causes a desire. Object is too close to threaten to reveal itself. The other's desire can be terrifying, maybe encompassing, devouring. Ghirovici writes, what causes anxiety is the fear of vanishing in the face of certainty of the jouissance attributed to the other. Her observations is born of the acknowledgement that there, in many trans memoirs, autobiographies, selfies, vlogs, etc., a painful jouissance, body fails to discern. In other words, there is a feeling of inner vacancy, suffering, enclosing, oppressing of self and lack of an ego functioning, a surface container. The body is experiencing a burdensome envelope, an exterior layer worn like an ill-fitting piece of clothing one is important to shed. Here we go. Transitioning may, Ghirovici suggests, be an attempt to reclaim the body and regulate jouissance. Certainly other Lacanian-inspired psychoanalysts writing on trans subject to agree. Referring to a patient named Aaron Goizon writes that a patient's new genitals made a productive cut. In other words, his finite genitals that could not produce a hetero reproductive terms. He imposed a cut into the clitoris of the patient's projections. The newly made genitals imposed a limit to the jouissance on the other as it enveloped Aaron's body. Through the transitions, Aaron was able to become his own person. Aaron's to Gosen, for Aaron's surgery perhaps became an unconscious way to close the possibility of being sucked into the other's grip. So it makes it impossible for you to become sucked into the other person's grip. In other words, you cannot be forced into the other person's grip. Like, so if you're a male still, you cannot be forced into the other person's grip as a male. So I was abused when I was a male and I had genitals. So I cannot be held onto, and so this makes so much sense. I cannot be held onto by my genitals, and I cannot be forced into the grip. So no longer can I be held onto if I get rid of my genitals. So I can only become the whole, and I can instead suck someone else into my grip, I guess. So it makes so much sense. So now for the surprise that I told you about. In the end, make sure you check out my video scrolling across the screen, how to come out in midlife as a transgender woman. It tells you all about coming out as trans in midlife, and that I hope this has explained all your. Make sure you subscribe. I'll be researching all the time. I should have 30 videos by the end of the month. And at the end of this video, I just answered my big question about being sucked into someone else's grip. So thank you very much.